All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here tonight. Those of you who are in person here in Long Branch City and those of you who are online, thank you for your attendance. My name is Candace Perry, and I am the New Jersey's Environmental Justice Director at the Department of Environmental Protection. I'm really pleased and thrilled to be here with Commissioner Sean LaTourette, our Commissioner of the Department, and Olivia Glenn, Senior Advisor for Equity and Chief of Staff at EPA's Region 2, which is the region that covers New Jersey. So we are here to talk to all of you about environmental justice here in Monmouth County. Unfortunately, there are some communities, because of their race, their income, and their ability to speak English well, that experience more burdens, more environmental burdens, like air and water pollution and flooding and extreme heat than others. Those same communities also tend to have less environmental benefits, like green space and trees that cool and clean the air and soak up stormwater runoff. We know that environmental justice issues come in many forms and that they do not always take place in our most dense and highly urbanized places. Unfortunately, they span across the entire region of our state, including in smaller and suburban communities and along our shore. We know that in this region, minority and low-income communities are contending with a number of contaminated sites due to the legacy of industry in the region, which unfortunately bring with it some tough economic hardships. And in Monmouth County has been and will be on the front lines of weather-related events like flooding and sea level rise as our climate gets warmer, and that the most vulnerable communities in Monmouth County will be hit hardest. This is why it is so important for government to hear directly from you all, from those who are most impacted, so that we can be informed of your daily lived experiences and then incorporate that feedback into the work that we do every day. So this is actually our 7th environmental justice session. We've been touring around the state in person to hear from overburdened communities across the state. So we've made stops in Burlington City, Elizabeth, South Toms River, Phillipsburg, Passaic City, Bridgeton, and now we're here in Long Branch and Monmouth County. So we thank you so much for the warm welcome and for the hospitality. We thank you to the City of Long Branch for lending us the space in the municipal building, and for our colleagues within the city and the Environmental Commission for being good hosts. So I'm going to just run for you what our agenda for today is going to be. It's really simple. I'm going to give my 2 colleagues on the panel some time to say some opening remarks. And then I'll hand the floor over to you. You can make your way to this podium here to my left, your right, and address your question to us or raise your concern that you would like for us to hear about. We ask that each of you please limit your comment or your question to a topic within Monmouth County. We really want to hear directly from overburdened communities tonight in Monmouth County. And if you have an issue that doesn't pertain to Monmouth County, please come up to us afterwards. We're happy to talk about your issue offline. To those of you online, we do see you. We are monitoring you. You have a couple of options. You can put your question in the chat and we can read them out loud, or you can use the raise your hand function. It should be in the lower controls on the Zoom. You can raise your hand and we can call on you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question orally. So you have a couple of options there. So before we go to you, I'm going to pass it to our fearless Commissioner of Environmental Protection, Sean LaTourette.
Do I have it on? All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for opening your community to us here this evening. I have the great honor and privilege of serving in our governor's cabinet and leading our Department of Environmental Protection on behalf of the Murphy administration. And there are a number of big priorities for us that we want to help every community with. And part of that has to do in order to perform the work that we do at the DEP, whether that's limiting the pollution that we all together create. Every activity we undertake has some pollution externality. We're creating pollution right now here together by being in this room and running the equipment to host this meeting. But it's our job to make sure that communities don't experience too much pollution. And some communities experience more pollution than others and have historically. And part of our job is to help correct that, to right the ship, to help improve the conditions of our environment everywhere for everyone. And there's lots of ways that we can work on that really important endeavor. Ways that we can better manage our stormwater and confront the flooding risks that we face, and we know you face here in this community, like many others across the state. Whether that's getting dirty properties that have been contaminated and left idle cleaned up so that they become productive areas of redevelopment and new growth and opportunity for communities, whether that's ensuring that there are quality parks and open space that serve everyone. The job is really big, and no issue that you may have to share with us is too small. And we want to make sure in doing these engagement sessions that we're hearing directly from people about their experience in their communities. It's one thing to sit in some concrete building in Trenton and think you have good ideas. It's another to be able to answer the needs that people have every day. And we can only do that by hearing directly from you. So I hope you'll join us and have something to share. We're not afraid of hard questions. And if we don't have answers, we'll try to get them for you. So thank you again for welcoming us and look forward to the conversation. I'll pass it to Miss Olivia Glenn, former State of New Jersey DEP member, now with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Thank you so much, Commissioner LaTourette, and good evening to everyone in person and online. My name is Olivia Glenn, and I'm the Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor for Equity for Region 2 of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Our region covers New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and 8 Indian nations. I'm delighted to be here representing the region in person. I will note that our regional administrator, Lisa Garcia, is participating online, so she is definitely listening in tonight. We have a few EPA colleagues who are here in the room with us. If you guys want to give a really big wave so everyone sees you. And for those of you online, if you want to give a virtual wave too, so that they know that you are there as well. For us at the US EPA, we have President Biden, Vice President Harris, and we have Administrator Michael Regan, who have demonstrated a great commitment to environmental justice and equity as an imperative for this administration. And that commitment has been demonstrated in a number of ways, from executive orders to funding priorities. And most recently, Administrator Regan established a new Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights for EPA nationwide. And to replicate what has been done on the national level, we have imitated that within our region, and we in our region just set up this past week a new office that is community engagement and environmental justice as a team that is working together. That team is going to continue to grow, is going to double in size from fiscal resources that have been given to us from President Biden. So we're going to continue to make even more traction. But because our territory is so broad, it is so deeply important for us to have really deep relationships like those we do with the New Jersey DEP and with incredible, long-time environmental justice advocates like Mr. Avery Grant, who is here in the audience today. None of us would be here on this stage, and none of us would be online talking about the work of environmental justice in New Jersey without pioneers like Mr. Grant. So we thank him for all it is that he has done. And so EPA is just here to be a partner. So we are here to support the commissioner. We've been here for each and every one of these locations, and so it's DEP show, but we're here to support. And just we want you all to know that the federal government is here to be a partner to you in these efforts. So thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivia. So before we move on, I'm remiss to not make a couple of housekeeping announcements about our interpretation services that we have in both Spanish and Portuguese tonight. So I'm going to ask our interpreter who's online on Zoom to unmute yourself now and just make that quick opening introduction. Marilinda and Linaire. Are you able to unmute? Okay, well, we will move on in the meantime, but we'll make those two announcements about our interpretation options that we have online available once the interpreters are ready for us. Thank you. Okay, I do want to transition us to another guest that we have in the house. We have the EJ coordinator at the U.S. Attorney General's office. And so I just want to invite you, Alex, to come to the podium and say a few remarks about some opportunities and options for the community to take advantage of.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Salaji. I'm an assistant United States attorney here at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of New Jersey. I want to thank you all for letting me be here tonight and taking some time to talk about what we do here in the state of New Jersey on behalf of the Department of Justice. And also I wanted to let you know what my role is as the environmental justice coordinator here in New Jersey. So first, we're all here because we understand how important it is to protect and enforce the environmental rights of all the people of New Jersey and the folks here in Monmouth County. And we know that we're part of a larger program and goal to make that happen. Now, I'd like to tell you what the U.S. Attorney's Office's role is and what part we'd like to play in that. So as many of you know, the U.S. Attorney's Office is part of the Department of Justice. And we are here to enforce the nation's laws, the federal laws in New Jersey. We recently formed the Environmental Justice Team in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And the goal of that is really twofold. First, we're here as part of a larger nationwide effort on behalf of the federal government and in coordination with the EPA to make sure that we not only enforce the federal environmental laws here in New Jersey and stop wrongdoers and violators, but also that we emphasize the violations that are occurring in some of the most hard-hit communities, the communities that are most vulnerable, the most disenfranchised, the ones that have been historically battered by environmental wrongs. So let's talk about how I think we can actually do that. And there's three quick ways that I'd like to tell you. The first is we think about the laws we can enforce. As a U.S. Attorney's Office and as an assistant United States attorney, we're here to enforce the nation's environmental laws. These are laws that many of you are familiar with, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and some laws maybe you're not as familiar with, like the Toxic Substances Control Act. We have the ability under many of these federal statutes to bring both criminal charges and civil penalties where appropriate to stop wrongdoers in these areas. And the second thing is, who do we work with? Well, first of all, sometimes these violations of federal laws are also violations of state laws. There's cooperation, there's communication between the DEP and our office, and the EPA. And we also work with the local communities, the municipalities, to make sure that we identify exactly what's going on in the communities, and we try to work to remedy those wrongs. And the third, and this is really the most important, and this is primarily why I'm here, it's to let you know how important you are as members of the community to helping us achieve the goals set out as part of the environmental justice team. We think there's nobody better situated to tell us what's going on in the community and to let us know about the health and safety of our neighbors than you, the members of the community. For that reason, we've created a number of ways within the past few months for members of the community to reach out to us directly, to reach out to me, to reach out to the rest of the environmental justice team in the U.S. Attorney's Office, to let us know what complaints you have, what concerns you have, what questions you have. We think that there's no case too big, there's no case too small. What's important is that if you see something that concerns you about you or your community's health and safety, or about the environment, that you let us know primarily through our complaint reporting system. We have all of the ways you can reach out to us on our USAO, the U.S. Attorney's Office website. And that's available through justice.gov/USAO-NJ. So that's justice.gov/USAO-NJ. You can reach us by email. You can reach us by phone. You can send us a letter. You can fax us. Any way you can get in touch with us. We want to hear what your concerns are. That's the best way for us on the EJ team and for me as the environmental justice coordinator to understand what's going on in our communities and remedy any wrongs that we see. And when cases don't fit our particular mandate, we'll make sure they get to where they need to go. We'll make sure they get to the Office of Environmental Justice or the DEP or the EPA or any of our partner agencies. We just encourage you to reach out to us because we're here, we're in the business of environmental justice, and we're here to help you. So I thank you very much for your time, and thank you for letting me talk about this really important issue. Thanks so much.
Alex, we appreciate your being here, and please thank the U.S. Attorney for our district. And will you just one more time say that announce the link that folks can go to in order to share their concerns with you, and Ana Maria will add that to the chat for our folks that are joining us online.
I sure can. The website is justice.gov/USAO-NJ. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, so it's you all's turn. We'll open up the floor to hear your questions, comments, and concerns. So please feel free to make your way to the podium and or put your question in the chat and or raise your hand, and we can call on you to unmute yourself. Please.
Good evening, David Enney from Monmouth Auto and Diesel Diagnostics in Eatontown. I'm just trying to get a grip on the environmental justice part of it, but what are we doing with the Superfund sites? I mean, because, you know, New Jersey leads the nation, and how many? Was there 115, 120 still on? And this has been going on since 1980. I know the Hess in Middletown, the old Exxon in Red Bank, right? The old Coca-Cola plant in Asbury Park. Are we getting anywhere on these? I mean, I don't even see any attempts to isolate. Every time it rains, you can see the oil slick in the Navesink River. So, you know, I know it takes money and it takes time, but I don't know, we're adding more departments and they're getting top heavy, but we're kind of forgetting about what really affects the people. Rusted out oil tanks in the ground that are sitting there for 30 years. So that's why I came, that's why I'm concerned. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Dave. I can offer you some thoughts on Superfund and where we are versus where we were 30 to 40 years ago. But the first point that you mentioned really concerned me about oil slick in the Navesink. And can you just sort of explain that a little bit more geographically, where you see
it's
that
right
and
on
when
the
you see that?
Cooper's Bridge, Highway 35. I think probably 30 years ago it was an Exxon. They closed it down. Another gas station was going to open, but they tested the soil and they found that they had a bad tank that leaked diesel oil into the ground. And it's been closed, I guess, since maybe the 80s, late 80s.
And give me the address again. At that again, what's the nearest
It's Highway
intersection?
35. It's on the southbound side, and it's right before the Cooper's Bridge on Route 35. I guess the next cross street across the highway would be Navesink River Road. It's Red Bank. Middletown's on the other side of the bridge. Middletown has the Hess on 35, a little further up, closer to Homedale.
And you said that's on the southbound side?
It's on the southbound side.
Okay.
And I fish the Navesink River. I'm an avid fisherman. And we go under the Cooper's Bridge for like this time of year for stripers. And anytime you go after a heavy rain, you can actually see the oil slick coming through there's a retaining wall. And you can actually see an oil slick in that river. And that's been slated. I know it's on the list of Superfund sites, but there's not even any remediation. There's nothing going on. There's, and it's just, I don't know. I guess we'll get to, equity and the injustice. This affects everybody.
Absolutely.
This is the quality of our water.
Absolutely, no question.
So this is something that we need, and you can blame everybody's party, but this has been going on 30 years. So if we're not getting the proper funding, this is something that has to be taken care of.
So this site was once upon a time a gasoline
It was a
service
gasoline
station.
station. It was
Okay.
a Exxon. I don't know how you remember if that was a service. Was that a repair shop too? Years. I think it was just gasoline. Just gasoline only.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you one more thing before I answer your question, which is, and maybe you can share this with some of your friends your friends that will often be out on the water and may see this as well, right? Whether we're talking recreational fishing or some commercial fishing, if folks are seeing this type of activity, no matter where they're seeing it, right? We have an app that you could put on your phone, and as you're seeing something like that, you can take a picture and drop the location, and then it will go into our system so that we can investigate it. So if you could share that, it's called the Warn DEP app. You can get on any smartphone, and that will help you share that kind of stuff with us right when you see it, because it's something that we would want to be able to investigate. And sometimes when you see the runoff issues occur, and you'll see the carrying of some pollutant that is temporary in that particular
Right, that
moment,
came from a storm
but it's
drain
repetitive.
or-
If it's repeating all of the time, having that information and knowing when that's occurring and seeing something like a photograph, it could help us in some root cause analysis. So if that's something you
Oh,
could
yeah,
share, that would be
absolutely.
terrific.
And that's Warn, WARN,
DEP.
DEP?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And so two quick points on the question. There's a big difference between a Superfund site and then what is a site that needs to be cleaned up, right? A Superfund site is the worst of the worst, and they're named a Superfund site by the federal government. Most cleanup sites, and we have thousands in the state of New Jersey, are not Superfund sites. And the identification of a Superfund site or a cleanup site, it's not a bad thing, right? And there is oftentimes we'll hear a commentary like New Jersey has the most Superfund sites in the country. Goodness, it must be bad. right? New Jersey must be terrible. Actually, we have them because we look and we examine and we list them and we then get them cleaned up. And we are very aggressive about doing that, and it's why we have so many. And they'll stay a Superfund site for a long time until they're fully cleaned up, and that can take decades. And so that's why you don't see the number on that list going down. But there are far more local sites that are in what we call the Contaminated Site Remediation Program of the DEP. And those are oftentimes the gasoline stations that have been unattended in terms of cleanup, or the dry cleaners and some small industrial or manufacturing or commercial facilities. The Superfund sites usually are larger, big chemical plants, entire rivers like the Passaic or the Hackensack. But this address and the location and the information you've shared tonight, it will help us to look into it. And if you want to share your information at the end here, you can, and we can get back in touch with you. That's why we're doing this.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
To hear from this community, no matter who you are, right? Issues like this affect us all, like you mentioned, and we will absolutely look into it. We were earlier this evening, our city representative showed us a site that has been idle for a really long time, that has contamination that has been unattended, right? And that is sometimes a shocking point to see that folks who have an obligation to clean these things up, right? Because if you own a gas station and there's been a leak at it, you have to clean it up. The law says you have to. It can sometimes take government agencies time to catch up to that. But when people and communities point those things out to us, it helps us to prioritize. So thank you.
Right. And New Jersey in the 1800s was the heart of industry.
Right? Absolutely.
You know, Hollywood started in this state.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot.
Hollywood's coming back. Parts of it's in Monmouth County.
All right. Thank
Thank
you very
much for sharing that.
No,
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, sir, I can add a little bit to that as well with regard to the federal Superfund program that is under the administration of the US EPA.
Right.
So if there happen to be any of those sites that you did provide to the commissioner that are in fact Superfund sites, as a point of follow-up, if they are, we'll make sure that we give you the most recent status update as well as allow you to know who the staff person is who's responsible for those projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Floor is open to whoever would like to ask a question next.
Hi, I'm Catherine Duckett. I live in the city of Long Branch, and I live in a household with 6 adults, 2 cars, and most people who bike. There's a systematic habit in the western half of Monmouth County of putting leaf and brush in the street. And as you drive out of this meeting, if you go down any of the residential streets, you'll see large piles of leaves and brush in the street. We also have a large population of people who go to work, besides my family, walking and biking from in the landscaping industry. And this seems to me that, well, I know it's dangerous. Members of my family have fallen off their bikes because a stick has come out, or they've been almost run off the road when they're, what do? There's traffic and there's this huge leaf pile. And I think this is an environmental justice issue based on income and transportation needs. We know there are lots of reasons people may not drive cars for economic reasons, health reasons, they have seizures. And this is a systematic leaf management method or leaf and brush management method that I think maybe requires some looking at. We in Long Branch are discussing it, but it would be nice to have some partners at a higher level. Thank you.
Could I ask some questions about that? It's really, it's interesting. We travel the state a lot, and I know Olivia travels the region a lot. And I feel like oftentimes, man, I must have heard everything. And I have
You
never
haven't
heard
heard
this
this
before.
one.
I have never heard this. And it's interesting, and so I just want to make sure I understand it, that folks who are like maintaining their residential property.
Right.
Okay, so they're raking up the leaves.
And the sticks and the brush.
And they don't put them in like the brown bags from the Home Depot? Okay. And
They
so
don't put them in in Highland Park, where I used to live. You put them in.
I live in Highland Park.
Yeah, well, you have your brown bag from Highland Park.
Right.
It seems to be a thing around here, and I don't know why it is, because they've invested in these scooping things that come along.
Oh,
But they
okay.
come along every 3-4 weeks, and
Like a vacuum truck for leaves.
no, it's sort of like it's got arms. I don't know what the technical term is, but it's.
And so then the brush and stuff is in the street. Somebody riding their bike can then fall.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have to go around it. They get run off the road. I think there's an environmental justice issue about bike education, because biking for rich people is leisure. Biking for poor people is transportation. And I know the state changed the law about how much space to give bikers, but that was not well publicized. I view this as an environmental justice issue in biking in general, because it's an incredibly low carbon, healthy thing to do, but we're really not promoting it. And this landscaping method, that there are more communities than just Long Branch around here that do it. The audience could probably tell me how many other communities will do it. But it would be nice if the state had some opinions about this method.
It's interesting because from our perspective, it is not an issue that would typically come into the Department of Environmental Protection.
Well,
right?
they didn't break any laws.
And so one of the things that it sparks for me is whether it's something that we share, an issue that we share with the Department of Transportation in like because there is programs that they run and duties that they discharge that relate to biker safety, that relate to complete streets, for example. So we will find a home for this. And if you want to share your information at the end with us, we can certainly get back to you on it.
I
So thank
believe
you.
Ms. Pena Herrera has my information.
Urban community forestry, could it be in that plan? Not really. Like maintenance of trees, leaves fall.
It's very local.
Yeah.
It's very local. It's very local ordinance based.
Yeah.
I would
We
imagine.
could recommend
Yeah.
guidance and the,
Yeah, maybe.
yeah.
Just having a sidebar discussion about, there's something called urban community forestry management plans.
Yes.
Right, and so in the guidance that the department offers for urban communities to create those forestry management plans, maybe there could be something that speaks to leaves that fall from trees and how you manage those leaves as guidance to municipalities.
Yeah, in these municipalities, all yard waste would go there in the street to be picked up by large trucks. So sometimes you have logs, sometimes it's huge piles of grass clippings. Landscaping companies are supposed to take their materials with them, but if there's no cop on the street, they don't. It's an issue for people who bike. And if we're really going to progress in terms of air quality and environmental justice, biking is a low-cost transportation method.
Yeah, no question. No question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, Marcus Sibley. I am Director, National Wildlife Federation for New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, and also the Chairman of New Jersey Progressive Equitable Energy Coalition. And good to see you all this evening. So my question is, well, first I just want to say thank you. It's important that residents have this opportunity to voice what's important to them. So I wanted to commend EPA Region 2 as well as the DEP for having these sessions all throughout the state. So we definitely appreciate that. It's also interesting going to different regions and hearing the different concerns. And that's what brings me to my question, because as an activist and someone who's focused on equity every day, one of the issues that I'm seeing, and I kind of hear it a little bit in some of the questions tonight, is that environmental justice has become synonymous with Black and brown communities. So when people are speaking about the topic itself, it's like that thing over there. And what we really need to do is find ways to galvanize all these different communities, because flooding is flooding, trash is trash, pollution is pollution. So my question is more like the messaging. What are we thinking about in terms of the messaging? Because we can't pretend. This still is a racist country. It is white supremacy everywhere. Let's not pretend that's not where we are. So when you have people looking at environmental justice as that Black and brown problem, you're never going to have people coming together to fight in a unified manner. So I'm just wondering, from a messaging standpoint, has the DEP or the EPA thought about how the messaging with environmental justice works or is working?
Mr. Grant wants to see how I deal with this one. Because he's spent a good chunk of his life and career in this space. I think the answer is, Marcus, that number one, I appreciate your being here, that there isn't a good answer. And I think what I see, and Liv and Candace, by all means, please chime in. We have a tendency in our dialogue in this country, and I don't say this country in a pejorative way. It's the only country I know, and I love it. Mm-hmm. But we have a tendency to look at issues in a really binary way, right? That there are always two of something. And oftentimes, we can only choose one of those two, right? We encounter this in our work every day, right? You can be for the environment or for the economy. You can't be for both. Well, I am. My job is about both. Our agency is about both. You can't be for environmental justice and for Monmouth County? Of course you can be for both. And so I think when there's this inclination when you hear the term that it means a certain thing, and that it falls into this binary camp, much like black and white. The word is justice in it. It must not be for white people. I grew up in a trailer park with lots of other poor white people. Nary a tree in sight. That was an environmental injustice. So I think it is part of our broader societal challenge to not fall into the habit of there being two channels, and whichever one we think ourselves in, somehow the right one. I think that's all I've got. What about you, Liv?
Mr. Avery started chuckling again. So now he wants to see how I handle this question. I think that your answer was fantastic and amazing, and I certainly won't pretend that EPA has it all figured out because we don't. I will say that we are certainly trying to make some very diligent strides to be sure that as we address environmental justice, we're trying to get to all the nuances of it, those that consider race, those that consider income, those that consider limited English proficiency, those that consider disproportionate impacts, and lack of environmental benefits. So we're certainly trying to take the steps forward to address it in a really comprehensive kind of way. I shared early on during the session that at the end of September, Administrator Regan established a new National Office for Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. And with that realignment of those two programs that were the Environmental Justice as an office and the Office of Civil Rights existed distinctly under different assistant administrators, but now they're coming together in a new way and with an elevated priority to be equal to the Office of Water and our land and emergency management and air programs and the like. So we're certainly doing our part to, number one, elevate it as a concern. I will say, just in terms of the way that we do our work, it's very powerful that we have regions. There are 10 EPA regions in our country. And so we have the opportunity to kind of process everything that we do in 10 different ways. And to talk to each other about the way that we do it and really try to learn from each other. And so with the setup of this new, we call that new office, government talk, an NPM. With the establishment of that new NPM, it has every region doing new talking and new revisiting how we go about doing the work, considering the intricacies and how we can just consistently learn from each other. So I would say it's a journey to justice, like what our administrator calls it. Your point is deeply well taken, and we will continue to ruminate on it and, of course, give you a call and invite you to our office to talk to us about this further for ideas you may have.
And I guess just really quick, just I guess advice would be, I have to look at everything strategically. And from a strategic standpoint, our current kind of model that we use anytime we speak about environmental justice, we only show Black or brown or sometimes indigenous representation. For me, from a strategic standpoint, that's not helpful because we still live in a racist country. So when people see representatives from groups that they don't really like, to be honest, that's not gonna bring them in. So I think our messaging and our imagery needs to start including more of the young, I mean, not even young, the poor white families who live in those trailer parks, who also have polluting facilities down the street. I think it's important to tell that story too, because we need more people to connect with these stories, and people aren't connecting to them the way they should. Every day people talk about the impacts of the carbon pollution in your inner cities and your environmental justice communities, and people don't care. So I want to add some more artillery to this fight and say, hey, guess what? There's also people who look like you who live in communities and they're dealing with cancer and they're dealing with asthma and they're dealing with premature births and low birth weight. They're dealing with that too. So it's just like a suggestion. I think we need to expand the optics when it comes to how we speak about environmental justice. And I'm sorry, Director.
Yeah, it's an important point that you're bringing up, a good question that requires some more thought. I think that the messaging piece is important, but I also think about, if we are building in protections for our most vulnerable and our most overburdened communities, we are inherently making life better for all. And so I see it as two parallel tracks. We're working on the messaging to cast a wider net, a broader tent, to increase that artillery that you're talking about. But if we're putting in policy measures and tools and strategies that just make life better for those most vulnerable communities, for the most overburdened, then we're inherently making it better for everyone. And so I don't think that one needs to happen before the other. Like, we need to figure out the messaging in order to, and to cast a wider net in order, before we can continue to do those protections. Let's continue to do the work, and let's continue to make action. And whomever is not clued in or bought into the messaging, we can continue to work with them. But my mind first goes to, that shouldn't preclude us from doing the good work for those who need it the most.
Of course.
I'll just throw a little color on this, and I always sort of want to ground myself in what people in the room what the audience's sort of dexterity is with any particular topic, right? Maybe you're here and you don't know what we mean by environmental justice. I think what you're hearing is we're all figuring out what we mean by environmental justice. And it can be an inclination to think, well, the laws that we have that prevent too much pollution in our air, or that help us to maintain clean water, that everybody benefits from those laws, and so there they are, and so it is therefore equal. But what we in the environmental services and environmental regulatory world have learned over the last 50 years since many of these laws were created is that the way they have been implemented has meant that some communities have cleaner water than others. And some communities have less flooding than others. Some communities have better air quality than others. And that is a function of the way these laws have been executed by government. And there is a way for us to improve upon that. And to Candace's point, if we work to improve those conditions in communities that have too much of the bad air quality, don't have enough of the clean water, or have too much of the flooding, that by improving that baseline, we lift everything. Environmental justice doesn't mean we're not going to allow a power plant to be built in the city of Camden, and so we're going to put it in Colts Neck instead. That's not what it means. It means we can have cleaner power plants that don't create as much air pollution in either place. We can, in fact, do that, right? And you do that by improving the baseline standard that applies to everything. And that's the way that environmental law has materialized and developed over the last 50 years. And sometimes we take bigger jumps than others. But that is the way that it has worked. We improve technology. We improve the ability to lessen that pollution. The proposition that we're talking about here when we talk about EJ is, let's start doing more of that first in the communities that have too much. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Avery Grant, Concerned Citizens Coalition. I'm glad, Commissioner, you ended that with that comment, because environmental justice did start out being a brown and black issue. That's where they put the garbage disposal issues and big roads and all the other stuff. But now we understand that the climate overall is affecting everyone. And if we're not careful, in a couple of years, Florida is going to disappear. So if you're a part of my committee, you'd be afraid right now, but he told us he sees in 50 years that America might disappear, but we'll die before then, so don't worry about it. But I'm saying to you, the comment is good. DEP has a listing of contaminated areas, and they're working with communities, and they worked with us. That's why the governor made me the first environmental justice petitioner to work with DEP, and he had them to sign $20,000 to staff to support us, and we got a lot done in this city, along with getting people who were sickened by that. We had a lawsuit, and 292 people. We had to sue the gas company. The gas company is a very community-minded. Don't think I don't love the gas company, because they pay for my Easter, Thanksgiving dinner at my church. But they bought a plant that was a manufactured gas plant site. In the old days, they would take coal that you burn in your house to generate the gas that goes through the pipes, and they throw it out and contaminate the ground. And once they had pipes coming up from Texas and Pennsylvania and stuff, they just went out of business. And the gas company bought the building over there to connect to that distribution system. And they leased the property to the city for $1 a year, and they made baseball fields and all the other things. And one summer, they were preparing the baseball field, and this stuff started oozing out the ground. And they realized that the company had been using this coal, burying it, and what happened? It was contaminated. And then the gas company, we tried to get to make it a Superfund site, and they said it didn't qualify at the time. And the gas company started, and that's why I like the gas company, because people don't know what they do in the school systems and stuff that they've divided. But they then took over the plant and started working on it. And unfortunately, as they dug up, there are 2 public housing projects along the way there, and all these fumes came up and people got sick, and they called me and others, and we rushed people to the hospital. And then they began to work on it, and the site was cleaned up. But in the meanwhile, I was invited to Princeton to talk about how we work with them to get things done. We got the creek cleaned up and stuff like that. And I mentioned that we had found out that there were 200 and some people sickened by this. And I don't know if Michael Gordon, he's still one of your lawyers now? Okay. He was at the Princeton thing. He says, Mr. Grant, you got a big lawsuit. And I said, wait, we ain't thinking about lawsuit. We think about cleaning up. He said, come, let us talk to you. And we got a group together, and he did talk with us. And he said, it's too large for me. I'll get Noam Hobby from Eatontown. And we put together a strong lawsuit. And they moved the lawsuit up to Hackensack. And what happened was they sued the gas company. And again, I love the gas company. They sued them, and they paid $15 million to pay off these people who had gotten sick because it was, they wanted to sue the city, but they said, we can get another $5 million out of the city. I said, no, you ain't doing that, because that'll affect innocent people here who didn't mean any harm. But what I'm saying to you, it's not just a black and brown issue anymore. It's a worldwide issue. And as I said, we've got to be consistent as far as speaking to our leaders and speaking to those who can help us to say these are the things we've got to improve, like you're talking about electric vehicles. That's important. We've got to do that. They're talking about windmills for generating power, electrical power. And there's along the way there they have built some. And then other communities who are wealthy, they say, oh, we don't want you to block our view. And that's stupid. Because we've got to be concerned about everybody. And you can see how we had Sandy here. And luckily my group was available, and we got some things done with the Army and stuff came in. But it's going to affect everybody. And I don't want to scare you, but I think I'm saying to you, you better talk to your Congress people and talk to the other people who can pass the word out and say, look, let's make sense of what's going on, and let's try to look at our future. And one time we had and I'm smiling because it's only because we don't understand some of the things. But one time we had a very big conference on Sandy, and there were a couple of people around, and one of my members, he's a professor at Rutgers, he brought in some pictures and showing how the atmosphere was being contaminated. And he showed these views. And what happened, he said, I want to show you something. And over Rumson, the hair was red. Now, they think they're safe. They aren't safe. So what I'm saying is we've got to work together. And DEP makes a real effort. They try to do this. They identify things, and they go into the communities and support us. And as I say, the governor made us, well, me it was first electronic, the environmental justice petitioners. And we've got to just let the people know that everything is important. You know, like even the leaf issue, that's a big issue. Now, we've got to leave it. There's no other place you can do it but people out in the street and let them pick it up and haul it away. I can't see anybody starting fires in their backyard. I got a property where it got big trees and I ain't about to burn all them leaves and stuff. You know, all of this affects us. And I know it's a concern because we got now so many kids riding bicycles, yes. And you got to watch that because they're riding out and the traffic is here and trying to avoid the leaves and all the other stuff. But we've got to understand that it's not a brown and black issue anymore. Yes, it was. But now it's a national, it's a world issue. And you see what they're talking about even over in Europe. They're suffering from a lot of issues there. And DEP, they're trying to work, and the governor's, Senator Booker, he has a environmental committee, and I was on that committee, and we'd go up his office, and it's a national one, and you hear the people out on the Indian reservations all across the country, they were talking, you know, what about the oil line coming from Canada and all the other stuff. So I'll leave you with that because I could have you smiling, but it's a serious thing. I want you to understand it's not a brown-black issue, it's a world issue. And you can see what happened here when we had Sandy. In fact, I live on Atlantic Avenue, and they came by and said, everybody here's got to evacuate. So we went to the hotel in Red Bank, and they lost power once we moved in. So you can smile, but I want you to take the word serious. It's not a brown-black issue, it's a national issue. And that's why I brought things into the school system to let our students understand they're going to be part of the future, and they're going to be some of the solution. So thank you for what you're doing, and we appreciate what you did for us, because we really got that site cleaned up, and then we got the sewer authority, they were upgrading their whole system, and they had odors that were coming from it, and they had not adjusted for that. So we brought you all in, and they said, well, you let us know. And we started to call them. They began to get fined for all the odors, and they changed it. They found money from the federal government, and now you get no odors. So please, think about that. You're part of the solution.
Thank you so very much for sharing that.
Hi. I saw you at the ANJAC conference, and you were wonderful, and I'm glad to see you again. My name is Kathy Buchanan, and I live in Long Branch. And there's an area in Long Branch between Atlantic Avenue and Avenel Boulevard. Jackson Woods is in the middle, and these two streets are on either side. On Avenel Boulevard, there is water that's running from a sewer on the other side of the street by the school that runs through the park, and it's covered in an oil slick. It's generally very dirty. It runs through the park to Manahasset Creek, and then it goes out to the Shrewsbury, where the gentleman talked about the oil slick. I think we're sending it to the Shrewsbury. We had an egret who lived in the park, and last winter we found him dead in the oil, and it was very disturbing to us because he had been there for a very long time. We do water testing with Monmouth University, and we found that the oxygen level in the water is extremely low. There's no salinity in the pond area, but in the other area, it's just, life is not there anymore. We had turtles that are no longer in that area. My concern is there's something wrong. And I would really like for you to come out and see it. There's also, this water runs throughout the park, and no one really knows.
Can you name the park again for me?
Jackson Woods. So here's Avenel Boulevard. On the other side is Atlantic Avenue. Also on Atlantic Avenue, there are sewers at the entrance to the park on that side, and they're cement. They're probably as old as could be. There are no covers on them. I've taken cardboard boxes out of those sewers. I've taken garbage out of those sewers. The water that's running through the park, there's a little bridge to the left-hand side, and the neighbors there are very upset because there's an oil slick and there's garbage, and they've kind of cleaned it up several times, but it comes back. They are also, the concern was that there is a, I don't know, I call it a floodgate. And there's been a lot of questions about whether or not that's working. Many people say that it's closed. Many people say that that's part of the reason the water's not flowing properly. I would like to see it all cleaned up. I would like to see a solution to the problem and to find out where all this water is running. And if we're going into Manahasset Creek and then into the Shrewsbury, obviously we need to clean it up.
Kathy, thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
If you know, again, I'm gonna point out our Warren DEP app so that when you're seeing issues that are of concern, you can put them right in there. We have this now from you, and we'll follow up on it for sure.
Because we've brought this to the attention of Clean Ocean Action. I brought it to the attention of the city. Everyone seems to think it's somebody else's problem.
Sure.
I like to get answers.
Me too.
I don't like things to be tossed around in the air. So I'm hoping that you're the answer.
Wow. We'll do what we can, that's for sure. Thank you for sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We'll talk more.
Thanks.
Hello again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There was a gentleman walking in the back. Did you want to come up and say something? I wasn't sure if you were walking toward the microphone. Okay.
Oh, no, this is really quick. I was just going to make a point about environmental justice. A tremendous part about that is equitable access. And it's important that that's at the forefront of everything we do, making sure that people have an opportunity to, like tonight, share what's important to them, but also to be able to receive information that's important. And NJPEAK has sent in our comments for the environmental justice rule, and we're hoping that you guys take the time to really look at those 33 pages of suggestions of how we can really bring our communities into these important conversations. And I was just gonna make a quick point to say, I'm grateful for this. This is access, this is inclusion, this is allowing people who may not be able to make it out physically to be a part of this process to get the information. And I want to encourage you as directors already working with other departments, I'm going to encourage you to encourage them to make sure we have virtual options. It's a lot of people, soon as that ordinance ended and the pandemic rule change with virtual meetings, as soon as that ended, they immediately went back to only in person and they restricted the virtual option. And that is absolutely against the spirit of environmental justice and inclusion and letting everybody be a part of this process. So I'm going to encourage you to please encourage your counterparts to go back to having a virtual option as well.
I trust you will give more details to Candace.
I sure will.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I would like to pick up on the access and inclusion topic, but from an interesting twist, because my take on moving forward on a lot of the issues that are being discussed tonight is for many people to feel very strongly a connection to the environment. And that means actually visiting their parks, feeling comfortable going to their parks. And I'm personally working on a project that, a geolocating audio tour that facilitates that, and I'm happy to be working with a bunch of facilities, venues in New Jersey on that. I would say that it's actually fantastic to watch the DEP and the EPA in action with so many experts doing such incredible work over so many decades. One thing I would say is the human side of the equation in terms of environmental involvement in a lot of the venues that you police is equally important, and sort of expediting people's ability to access, improving trails, for instance, I think would be really, really helpful. I would say that actually there's an initiative that I've gotten to join, a trails task force that's part of DEP, and I'm excited to learn and participate in that as time goes forward. And I think it's an initiative to connect trails across the entire state of New Jersey and make them accessible and available and stuff to people. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's moving in the right direction. But I just want to encourage you to make all these outdoor venues accessible and very comfortable, for people to become environmental advocates at the same time. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that comment. It's interesting, and I imagine that Olivia would have some comments to this end, given your areas of expertise in outdoor recreation and forestry and parks. The Department of Environmental Protection in our state also, in addition to working on issues like flooding and pollution control, we also oversee our state park system, and we invest in local and county park systems. And it's a pretty large part of the work that we do, both from a facilities management perspective and stewarding its budget. And there are a lot of investment needs across our 51 parks, about to be 52, because we're going to make a new one. And the greater engagement that we have with communities and with friends organizations that can get invested in those parks and facilities, the greater the word gets out. Not lost on us. We are running an initiative right now that's called Outdoor Together, which is an initiative to build the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan that will help us to set funding priorities on both sides of the house, right, in terms of our state parks management, as well as in our funding strategies for our Green Acres program that invests in local and county parks. So I'd recommend you take a look at that. If you were to Google DEP Outside Together, you will find it. Liv, any thoughts?
You did a great job covering that base, Commissioner. I will just add, from the EPA perspective, thank you for even recognizing the work that EPA and DEP has been able to do together. I will share with you that some of the work that EPA is most proud of are those things where it shows up in transformation of natural landscapes. And so not only for us here in the region, but even nationwide, we just had our National Brownfields Conference back in the summer. And in that conference, one of the awards that was received in Region 2, which is this EPA region, was for a wonderful project in the city of Camden, the Cramer Hill Waterfront Park, that was a transformation of a landfill into a waterfront park, a landfill that hadn't been operational for decades and was never properly closed and had debris just falling directly into the Delaware River, has now been closed and capped, and that park is now the largest park in the city of Camden. And so there are examples like that all around the state. So for us at EPA, it's like the commissioner said for DEP, it's more than just flooding, it's more than just air quality. And environmental justice is also about ensuring that there are benefits that are provided where there has been a deficit. So when we have those opportunities to be a part of those projects where we can give the seed money for those cleanups, it's really very powerful for us, and we know that it's very important. So thank you for underscoring it with your remarks today.
Just want to take the time to make another call for those of you who are online to unmute yourself, to ask your question, or feel free to put your question in the chat. No need to be shy if you have thoughts to share.
I'm Enes Bengül from Long Branch. I have a request from the DEP, or maybe the state, you can tell me. The state has a program that brings the opportunity to towns to buy electrical garbage trucks. It pays half of the money to buy. They're much more expensive than diesel garbage trucks. But EPA, I think DEP maybe, you can tell me, from the RGGI money, uses some of that money to buy electric trucks for companies like Neptune, which is a little bit south of here, just I think got one. Wall Township, further south, got one. Jackson got one. Long Branch hasn't gotten one yet. This is a voluntary program. I think it would be great if the DEP made it mandatory for towns, or maybe the state, maybe the legislature, maybe the DEP could tell the legislature to make this mandatory for whenever a replacement comes up. It could be required, that the towns will be required to buy an electric truck. As you may know, in Long Branch at least, most of the people, almost all the people who work on those garbage trucks are young black men. And they're being exposed to the diesel that those trucks are spewing every day, all day long. And as you know, I think you know, and maybe the public knows, diesel causes cancer. Those particles cause cancer. So this is an environmental justice issue that the state could require the cities, the towns, to, whenever the replacement comes up, to get electric trucks and provide the money to RGGI, maybe to require, because right now, otherwise it's going to be a big effort for me to go through Long Branch to get them, when the replacement time comes up, to get them to convince them to buy the truck. But if it's a state requirement, then they're going to have to do it. So that would be my request from the DEP. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I would have a few observations. Number one, 1,000% agree that diesel exhaust is good for no one, not for our kids on school buses or any rider of mass transit, or people walking up and down the street as they pass. There are a couple of things afoot from a regulatory perspective, meaning rules that we can make at the DEP to help hasten the ultimate turnover of heavy-duty and medium-duty vehicles. And it is a long game. There's no question about that. Those types of requirements, they become phased in over spans of years. That is why we've made funding available to local governments in particular. Right? And so for any member of an environmental commission, any member of the governing body, even residents here today, to let your local governments know that you'd like to see cleaner burning trucks running through your neighborhood. There's money available consistently every cycle, every quarter, every year for local governments to apply for that funding, and we'll continue to make it available. And with respect to mandatory turnover, certainly something that a legislative body would have to consider. But we will certainly continue to make resources available for local governments to make those wise choices, right? And pay the difference in that cost. Help to get electric vehicle charging equipment installed. It makes all the sense in the world. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to go to Rachel Davis. I see that you have your hand up online. And then we'll go to you next, sir. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, can everyone hear me or no?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? I can hear you. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, so I just wanted to thank the NJDEP and EPA Region 2 for having this session. It is a global issue and it requires effective communication. I cannot be physically present tonight, so thanks to those who can. I really, really appreciate the virtual option. I'm grateful to the speakers who've shared thus far and for this session again. We are all connected. I'm Public Policy and Justice Organizer for Water Spirit, a nonprofit spiritual ecology center and ministry of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace, based in Monmouth for almost 25 years. We're actively vocal about environmental justice throughout the state, and we offer green infrastructure coordination and support with many coalition partners interdisciplinarily. We are glad to help, particularly in Monmouth, which is home to some of the most beautiful parks in the world. I grew up in Bergen County. So we are a member, to be a little bit more granular, to set up my question, there's a little bit of a story. We're a member of the Rally for the Two Rivers Coalition, advocating for the protection and education of the Navesink and Shrewsbury rivers. So I was tabling at the Red Bank Green Fair, using an EnviroScape this past spring, demonstrating exactly what the first speaker shared: oil leaking into the Navesink in addition to plastic and animal waste. And families were clear that pollution was wrong and that the river is sacred, yet many people still believed wholeheartedly in not picking up after their dogs when they defecate. When it rains, obviously this goes into the river, and local volunteers confirmed it remains a huge issue. And so there are like 30-something people here virtually, and I'm not sure how many in person. My question is, what methods of communication is NJDEP and EPA looking to field? And I guess sort of similarly to Marcus, how consistently is this going to happen? And again, I just really appreciate this session.
Can we be heard now? I just want to make sure we're not crossing. Okay. Really great questions, Rachel. Thank you. In questions like this make me reflect on this notion that my grandmother used to drill into my head, and maybe your grandmothers or caregivers in your lives too, to do something really simple. And sometimes the simple things can end up being the hardest, which is to leave the place better than you found it, right? Wherever it is that you are, whether it's this room tonight or that park you love, to leave it better than you found it requires some personal act. And the interesting thing about so many of our environmental problems is the fact that they materialize from many individual acts. I won't suggest that we're past the time in our history where we don't have big, giant polluters that are a problem. We do, right? But this isn't the 1960s, and the rivers aren't on fire anymore, and we're grateful for that. We're grateful for that because it's the product of so much great action on a community level and on a legislative level and through organizations like the EPA and the DEP. The problems that we face today are much more diffuse, right? We see things like big harmful algal blooms shut down recreations on lakes and infect water supplies. And part of the reason for that is because of nutrient loading. It's because, in part, we are not picking enough up after our dogs, right? Or the local communities can't seem to get a handle on the geese, right? Every little act does matter, right? But it can sort of feel silly in the course of your day, like, oh, maybe I left that water bottle at the table and I should have put it in the recycling. God knows where it ends up, and we forget. But every little act has power to it and can change outcomes. How we communicate that, I think through forums like this and the good work, Rachel, that you and your organization do to help engage people around those topics. But the little things really, really do matter.
Rachel, I want to thank you so much for your comments. And, it brought to my mind a couple weeks ago that we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. And for that event, we were privileged in New Jersey to do that event in the city of Camden. And Commissioner LaTourette was there as a part of that event. And as we were reflecting on where things were 50 years ago, and where things are today in the city of Camden, which is where we held this event, yes, the challenges have changed. The path that lies before us right now to keep it going is so much more intrinsic on all of us continuing to work together and for government entities to put in the fiscal resources that are needed to get us over the finish line for really huge projects like combined sewer overflows. They are entirely obsolete. And how we just continue to phase those out collectively. That's local work, it's state work, it's federal work. But it's also just the little efforts to keep the waterways clean. And that's been done in intervals, intermittently, over the course of the past 50 years. And that is definitely attributed to communities who have been partners with us all throughout this effort. So I think as we continue to recognize things like the work of the Clean Water Act, it's an example to us for us having to continue working together. EPA is here because we realize, literally here tonight, in person and virtually, we're here because we know that we can't do this work alone as a federal government agency. It depends on us being on the pulse of what residents, communities, and grassroots organizations have to say to make sure that the work that we're doing is pointed in the right direction. Mr. Avery just talked about so much earlier today that had been done here in Monmouth County, and that's just one example of how New Jersey DEP and EPA and Rutgers Law Clinic and so many other partners who were integral to furthering the work that he initiated came together. It's because of local voices like this. So I think if we continue with that kind of model, make it a part of what we do consistently, we'll continue to grow and leave this world to be a better place for our children and grandchildren.
Vincent Lepore, Long Branch. I'm going to be a little bit more practical than ideological.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Vincent Lepore. I can assure you DEP CAFRA is very familiar with me. To the woman that gave the accolades to Mr. Grant, those accolades were well deserved. I know Mr. Grant for a very, very long time. I've worked with Mr. Grant on a number of environmental matters. Every word you said was correct. I'd also like to state Monmouth County has two very good organizations as well, who've been the mentor for many. And those organizations are the American Littoral Society of Tim Dillingham and Clean Ocean Action of Cindy Zip. Again, two stalwarts that are dedicated to what they do, and they've mentored us. The environmental justice, if you go on your website, DEP, for environmental justice, it has two meanings: fair treatment and meaningful involvement. The fair treatment meant that no group shall bear any negative environmental consequences. The meaningful involvement, as DEP states it, means that all have the ability to participate in the decision of the environment that affects them. Again, I'm more practical than ideological. I wish DEP would practice what it states, because it doesn't. I've been dealing with DEP for many years on many issues. On a positive note, we did have a success with DEP, CAFRA, through your law enforcement division on a DEP CAFRA beach access site in Pier Village, which the city of Long Branch didn't do anything to enforce for many years because they didn't want to upset Charles Kushner of Pier Village. And yet I'll name the names and give them credit. Diane Campanella and Tampy Miller out of your Toms River Enforcement Office. They got the job done. Unfortunately, it took them more years than they had to because our zoning official in Long Branch, Eric Brockman, didn't help them. And you can confirm that with them. All right? We have no coordination in this city between NJDEP, the City Council, NJDEP, and the Environmental Commission on truly basic matters. Well, one example, you talk about urban forestry. And you had Ordinance 2-22 at the beginning of the year. We have 4.5% urban forestry left in this city. Our master plan called to protect it. What did the council do? In a political dealing, they vacated the urban forest for a parking lot. The Environmental Commission was worthless. The ordinance in this city allows the Environmental Commission to review every application before the planning board. Nothing was done. You have John Pallone as mayor and Frank Pallone as congressman coloring themselves as environmentalists. They did nothing. As far as I'm concerned, they're hypocrites. They know I'd be here tonight because I'd call them out right in front of you if they were here. And I'd call this city council out as well. But more aggravating that, right now there's a hotly contested matter before CAFRA. Congressman Pallone, Mayor John Pallone have proven themselves to be the ultimate hypocrites, along with the City of Long Branch, and along with the City of Long Branch Environmental Commission. And I'm not holding back on this. And DEP is part of the problem. There was an application in a redevelopment zone of Beachfront South for a high-density megastructure, high-rise. Violated the coastal zone management rules of CAFRA. When that was brought to the attention of this council.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
And I can tell you feel very passionately about this, and I respect that.
Pragmatic.
I just want to know where you're talking about.
Beachfront South, the coastal Long Branch, between Morris Avenue and North Bath Avenue.
And what avenue? Morris Avenue and what avenue?
North Bath.
Do you have an address?
290 Ocean Avenue.
Thank you.
The application before CAFRA is 290 Ocean LLC. I argued before this council, before them adopting their ordinances, and I argued before the planning board, support of NJDEP CAFRA, coastal zone management rules, in the face of a high-rise, mega-sized building with high density, completely violating, again, the coastal zone management rules. Mayor Pallone, this city council completely ignored those arguments. when it went before the planning board. At the time the matter was before the planning board, June 25th of this year, NJDEP CAFRA issued a letter of denial on that application for noncompliance with coastal zone management rules. The planning board attorney instructed the planning board members the letter is not to be involved in their decision. That's the first time since 2003, when I've attended all these meetings in this city, that I've ever heard NJDEP CAFRA has no bearing on a planning board decision and cannot be read into the record. Because I tried to put it in a record, and another individual, a corporation, Black Ridge Realty, tried to do it. And because both were denied the ability, I and Black Ridge Realty, to have that letter of denial introduced into the record, action has taken place in Monmouth County Superior Court. M190-21, Black Ridge Realty versus the City of Long Branch. Fast forward. We're now at a point where I get very practical. I've been dealing with DEP probably more years than most of you here. It's a political organization. There's no question about it. And it's a political ram job on many things. This is a political ram job. And I'm telling you why. The city attorney, Louis Raynone, is partner with Coughlin, Raynone, and Michello. Coughlin being the Speaker of the Assembly of the state. City attorney was so confident from the beginning that he can bust through those coastal zone management rules. What gave him that confidence? But the political connections he had through Coughlin, through Murphy, down to people in the DEP CAFRA. How do I know that? Because you've got people in your land use department that are in complete shock right now. Complete shock. Because what has happened is, with no new sets of plans, NJDEP CAFRA has reversed their letter of denial with an intent to settle. No new plans, nothing. Compromising the view corridor of the coastal zone management rules and the coastal setbacks to allow a mega high-rise building on an ocean front in violation, again, of your coastal zone management rules, which made a redevelopment zone on fast-track approvals for mid-rises. That's in your coastal zone management rules for Long Branch. So there's a political ram job going on here. The matter is still in an appeal process. I get a notification on September 28th from Colin Keller, part of the team, that the matter is going through the appeal process. And there is a party that has appealed it, correct, Black Ridge Realty. On October 12th, the workshop council meeting in the caucus room back there, City Attorney Raynone publicly on the record states the matter has been settled. 290 Ocean Avenue has been settled. I have till December 3rd, and everybody else has till December 3rd of this year to register comments on this matter. That is the appeal process for us with DEP's intent to settle. But no, according to City Attorney Raynone, on October 12th, on the public record, the matter has been settled. What we're doing now is we've notified the State Attorney General. I'm glad the U.S. Attorney's here because it's going before the U.S. Attorney within 2 weeks. We know what's going on, and we will not tolerate it. And I know people in DEP CAFRA who are very shocked and very frustrated. They look at those coastal zone management rules literally as the book that cannot be disturbed. I have CAFRA lawyers out there who are in shock throughout this state, telling me they've never seen anything like this before. Never. Wildwood, New Jersey is waiting for the matter to be settled with NJDEP CAFRA, because they have mega high-density, high-rise buildings they're ready to put through in violation of your coastal zone management rules. I find the matter sickening with DEP right now, unjustified. Should DEP CAFRA issue the permit, I can assure you the permit by NJDEP CAFRA is indefensible. It will be facing the barrel of a legal shotgun. I hope I've made myself clear about my dissatisfaction with NJDEP CAFRA. As I said,
You have made your dissatisfaction very clear. I can tell that you know a lot about it, and unfortunately, I do not. But I promise you that I will ask some questions of my colleagues.
you can go right to Matthew Resnick and Janet Stewart, and they will tell you in land use, and they will tell you exactly what's going on. And then you can walk around the land use team there and ask them, what are their feelings of what's taking place? When they put into a decision of June 25th, 2021, to enforce coastal zone management rules, and then they get thrown to the side by their own agency.
I think it sounds like they got sued, but I will definitely follow up. And if you registered your name, Vincent, and your contact information back there, I'll make sure someone calls you and lets you know what's going on.
Well, I'm on top of it. I deal with Colin Emerly of the legal department of DEP. I've notified her about the New Jersey State Attorney General having the matter. And as I said, within 2 weeks, it's going to hit the U.S. Attorney. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know you waited a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. We have 2 questions left. I see that you have your hand raised online, Sasha Duckenfield. Feel free to unmute yourself now.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I actually live in Freehold Borough, and I wanted to bring to your attention the Conrail they own the railroad tracks out here, Conrail. I actually work for the borough, and we just did a cleanup day back in September, and basically we did that with a couple of organizations because the Conrail refuses to keep the railroad tracks clean. There's a lot of other issues like homeless people living on the outskirts of the railroad tracks behind some of the homes and businesses, but we picked up, and we did actually partner up with Monmouth County as well to help us with their trucks to dispose of, but there was about 2 tons of garbage and all types of stuff along from Broad Street to it's either Avenue C or Avenue A, I always get those confused, but from that little strip of the railroad tracks, we picked up 2 tons of garbage. And the borough officials, of course, try to connect with Conrail about keeping it clean, but you just never get anywhere with them. And they only come through with the trains, probably the freight trains, maybe a handful of times a month. And they only are going 5 miles an hour of that, so they obviously see all of it, but they just refuse to keep it clean. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, any way of connecting with them to just do a better job. I mean, the garbage was literally buried, where we had to dig it from out underneath dirt. It's just been there for years. And with that, once you start that piling up, it just makes it easier for the people that are homeless or whatever their situations are to just hide behind the rubbish. Yes, of course, the town could monitor that situation a lot better, but still, I just feel like if you do your part like, some of the people have spoken tonight, if they do their part to keep it clean and maintain it, then it will, spread. There'll be less, rubbish to hide everybody if they keep it up. Also, the Continental of Freehold, which I lived there for 15 years. There's a load of issues that probably had nothing to do with DEP, but I know they have flooding issues in front of the building, and that address is 40 Jackson Street, where there's water still there even after it rains, maybe, days later. So that's a concern, and I've only been out of there for about a year. I don't know how this may relate to the control with the DEP, but there's garbage issues there as well. That's internal, it is inside of the building, but then it trickles outside of the building. And I just went through there with the borough, the Board of Health, and other entities locally, and the building literally needs to just be burnt down. It's that bad. It's almost like it just needs to be condemned. They won't clean up the garbage. Like, the garbage comes out of the garbage room. It goes down to the chutes, but then goes down to the, it just causes so many other problems. So, like I said, I don't know if that's a DEP problem, but there's definitely a lot of issues, and maybe with your connections, there can be some light shed on there. I mean, there's mold issues in there. None of the vents work so people can actually breathe properly in the building. There's no ventilation in the hallways, which, can cause, I have a friend that lives there who her son hasn't been able to breathe properly for a year or two. And I, as much as I try to encourage her to reach out to certain people, it's just that part of the, that system of not having the right information.
Yeah.
You do make the calls and they say they're going to call you back, they don't call you back. And I'm like, she literally was in the shower and the tile fell down and there's black mold all behind the tile in the wall. So I'm telling her, this is definitely an issue, right? It's just probably can't breathe. But like I said, that may not be your angle and what you can, help with. But definitely the Conrail situation and the flooding in front of the building, that's a big problem in this area. And thank you, as everybody else said, thank you for doing this.
Sasha, thank you for sharing that with us. Two observations in reaction to that. It sounds like the rail corridor has some illegal dumping issues going on. From what you're describing, one of the things that we can do is reach out to the borough and let them and get them aware of the illegal dumping programs that we run. And the trainings that our team provides, both for the local government and for the county prosecutor's offices, because we help them to we help them in a couple of different ways. Sometimes we have added resources where we can do remote cameras alongside local government partners and give them the ability to wirelessly and remotely monitor certain places that are illegal dumping hotspots. And then we work with the county prosecutors to help them understand how to execute legal actions against those that are identified as perpetrators of illegal dumping. With respect to your issues at the Continental, it sounds like something that needs to be put on the radar of the Department of Community Affairs that works with local governments to do certain types of inspections. I'm not sure if this falls within that, but it's certainly a resource that we can get back to you with a contact person to get in touch with.
Go ahead, Sasha.
Oh, sorry. I'll provide Anna Maria privately my email address because I work for the business administrator, so that way you can send the information about the cameras directly to me, and I'll make sure to get it to the appropriate people, and as well as the other information for the community affairs. I really, really appreciate it, because you kind of get stuck in a circle. It's like you go and you try to talk to the people, and the residents feel like the local government can just do anything. They really feel like you can just go and shut down a building, and it doesn't work like that. It's above the local government. They do paper trails and all that, and it is frustrating now that I'm inside to see how it actually works. So I'm just thankful that Senator Gopal's office sent us this information to be able to be on this Zoom, so we can, get back to the residents with some answers and be able to hopefully turn over a new leaf here. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sasha. And so we'll give the floor to you, Tony Bianchini, online. The last question to you.
Hey folks, I just had a quick question that I asked in the chat. I want to know if DEP had a time frame for when the new environmental rules, specifically the NJAC 7:1C, will be finalized and published by the department. There was that public comment period that ended in September, and a bunch of companies are under AO 2125. And so I wanted to know if you guys had any idea when it would be finalized, either at the end of the year, early next year. Appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Tony. We are going through and Marcus Sibley brought this up in one of his questions as well. We are in the process of going through all of the comments that were submitted in September and preparing responses to all of the comments that were submitted. That's part of the rulemaking process. There were a lot of comments, which we're grateful for. That also does add some time to make sure that we're thoughtfully responding to all of them. And so we're doing that. I do think we're on track for the timeline you mentioned, end of this year, early after the turn of the year. Hard to be precise. I do want folks to enjoy Thanksgiving and the holidays with their families. So, but we're firing on all cylinders. It's very important to us to get across the line, and it will happen.
Is he saying something? Okay. All right, thanks, Tony. And thanks to all of you in person and online for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking your time to show up and to tell us about your issues, your concerns, your questions, all the things that you're living with, dealing with in Monmouth County. It means a lot to us to establish this point of connectivity and relationship with all of you. Please know that the Office of Environmental Justice is a resource. Whenever you just want to talk about noodling through an issue, you're not sure which department or which state agency or whether it's the federal government would have a solution to your issue, the Office of EJ serves as that point of connectivity to really help filter your concern to the appropriate party. So that is a role that we are committed to play, and we're also committed to just listening. So this is the first step in doing that, and we hope to be remaining connected in the future. So any last words from my panelists?
Yes, certainly. On behalf of EPA Region 2, we just want to thank the DEP so much for always being gracious to offer us an opportunity to participate. We don't take it for granted how important it is for us to have strong relationships with our state governments, with our local communities, and we know that for us, in terms of furthering environmental justice, what happened tonight is the only way it can happen. We start with hearing from the voices of the community. So we truly thank you for being here, for sticking it out for 2 hours, both in person and online. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
I'll send those thanks right back your way, Liv, and to everyone here from the EPA and those online, to our incredible team, Candace and Maria and Nadia, and to everyone who showed up today. And for the folks online, thank you for sharing your comments and your questions, or just listening. Those who shared their information have something for us to get back to you about. We will do that. And there's something really important that I ask everyone to remember when we're in forums like this, which is that our environmental resources, our air, our land, our water, and our fish and our wildlife, our parks and our open spaces, all of that, it doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to the DEP or to the EPA or to your local elected leadership. It belongs to the people, right? Every environmental resource belongs directly to you. And it is just our job to take good care of it for you. So thank you for helping us to do that.